Hi everyone, it's David from Automotive Press. I have a Kia EV9, which is one of the very few three-row SUV in the fully electric format. Not too many competition yet, so my hat's off to Kia for bringing one of the first ones in the market with a full-size configuration with a three-row, and it's fully electric. So really interesting vehicle. And so I'm going to do my full engineer's review, but do keep in mind that one of the things I really find interesting and intriguing about Kia is that their business strategy is unlike any other brands out there. You'll make a great case study for something like an MBA class because they had a very humble beginning, and look at where they are just a decade or so later. They've done so much with the brand. People love this particular brand and what they represent, and their business strategy has been absolutely phenomenal because of the growth of the brand, but also because they have been able to recreate something quite wonderful with the loyal followers in a way that perhaps other brands and other automakers have not been able to do. So once again, really interesting company to follow. They are part of the Hyundai group, but quite distinct still in terms of their approach to strategy and marketing and communication. So I think more than any other brands, I have a real respect for what they have been able to do with their product side and just being able to produce something as cool and as unique as EV9. So let's get into full details as to what the quality is, driving character is, and most of all, whether or not this is something you should consider buying. Let's go. Welcome back. So I'm doing my formal full engineer's review, and that starts off with my usual quality check, which is to make sure that this thing is built well. Let's take a look at the gap and also panel alignment and the paint quality check as well. First, the gap. It's actually quite impressive at 3.8, 3.7 millimeter, 3.8, pretty consistent actually, front and back, 3.6, and then over here 3.7 millimeters. So really consistent, but where I was quite impressed compared to some other brands and automakers is the consistencies of the gap. So it's all the way through is same width. It doesn't go wider or narrower. It's also fully flush right here. So the alignment is perfect. If you keep looking at the quality of the sheet metal, if you look at the creases, everything lines up. So kudos to Kia for being able to produce something with a phenomenal quality. It's a little hard to believe that this is a Kia model because you might think Kia is not quite up to the standard of, let's say, Toyota or even the higher standard Lexus. But as far as the numbers show, it is as good, or in some cases better than some of the Toyota product. This vehicle is built in Korea, and I think Korean factories have come really a long way, and they're right up there with some of the best from Japan. And so I have no doubt that in terms of the overall manufacturing quality, at least for exterior, looks really good. The paint job actually is even more impressive when I'm looking through this beautiful bright blue color. There's very little orange peel, something that is a bit of a weakness with Toyota and let's say Honda brand. They tend to have a lot of actual orange peel, but this one is quite minimal. There are some, but the actual texture of the orange peel is different than what I see from a Japanese brand. In the Japanese brands, the orange peel is very textured and very obvious. This one, not so obvious, and it has a kind of beautiful paint job all the way through, and a beautiful application of clear coat throughout the whole vehicle. And the plastic pieces looks good. Everything seems to fit. There's a little bit of paint blemish right here between this part and that part, but it's very minimal. And otherwise, the plastic parts all look good. This is actually a piece of plastic that goes over a wheel so that it has a better aerodynamic efficiency. But as far as I can tell, even if I look at the back here, right now the gap here looks good, and even the paint quality and the paint matching between the body and the bumpers are actually really good. Look at that. It's really hard to do that these days, but the paint matching looks good. They must have hired some of the best manufacturing engineers or learned from the best, because from what I can tell, the paint quality is also excellent, and again, as good or better than some of the brands from Japan, such as Toyota. Okay, so now I'm inside the vehicle. Let's take a look at the quality control, manufacturing, fit and finish. And again, I'm so far pretty impressed with this Korean-built EV9. I'm looking at the gaps between the plastic pieces. I'm looking for the texture of the plastic. Is this a hard plastic here though? And this is a soft plastic, and everything actually feel pretty good, other than maybe the front of the dash, which is a plastic. I don't really like that. but the quality of the material, how everything fits, the feel of the buttons are surprisingly really good, like something that you will find in high-end Toyota or even Lexus model. It looks about the same from what I can tell so far, and the matching of the plastic materials is also really important. So the color gradient and the color saturation from here to here to here to here all looks really good. They purposely made sure that this part has a slightly different color, but you get kind of nice texture here as well. So beautifully made, and the seats are also really well designed. You would never think that this is a Kia. If I didn't tell you that this is a Kia, you probably wouldn't believe me if you just walk into here, take a look inside. It looks as good as what we find in something like top of the line Rivian, R1S for example, and that would be a direct competitor to this, but this is way cheaper than Rivian. So as an overall, I would give a really high score of 4.0 for interior. I would also give 4.0 for exterior. It's not perfect, it's not quite Lexus Tahara level, which it would be in 3mm gap. This is almost 4mm gap, so that's my current score, 4.0 outside, 4.0 inside. Now let's go back outside and let me just point out a few more engineering things. So I'm back outside now, and I just want to talk about the engineering design of this vehicle. So you see this interesting color combination that comes through the paint, and you can actually pay extra and get different patterns of the light. So that's really cool. And look at all the different rows of lights in here. And this one comes over here, goes up, down with a little bit of a curve here as well. So you gotta admit, Kia and also Hyundai too have had some really cool design, because they hired away some of the best designers from Germany and from elsewhere. And so people who are behind these designs are not your typical Hyundai, Kia group designers. They're actually from outside, and that's why they are coming up with some really amazing design. I think choice of the material here, all good. I would say this is not practical gloss black right out here, so if you happen to scrape through something or you take this for light off-roading, this is not ideal. Otherwise, I don't mind the rest of the design. Even the door handle that pops in and out seems to be pretty smooth on this vehicle. In some cars it's just awkward, sometimes they don't pop out or they don't pop in, but no problem so far with the Kia. The back over here has a bit of a Volvo feel to it, but very rectangular design. Look at these crystals, also split. Again, the Japanese brands just don't do this kind of design. They're so much more conservative. But here we are with Kia, much like the way the Telluride made a difference when it came out. Just really cool design come through here. And as an engineer, I have to admit, this is really impressive. And I'm amazed at how much of a detail they came up. Even here, got a little bit of a crystal look to it. So I love the design, and if you don't know any better, you wouldn't guess that this is a Kia, because it just looks like an expensive 3-row SUV, and actually looks better than most SUV out there, regardless of whether they're EVs or not. But if you look at this, if you look at Rivian R1S, which costs a lot more, you know what, they look like similar model in some way. And in fact, this one looks even cooler than the Rivian. So I'm curious what you guys think. Let's go back inside one more time. So I already talked about the interior quality, but what about the design from engineer's perspective? Well, you get this nice two-tone finish, what looks like a very expensive looking stitch all the way through. And you know, the choice of materials is interesting. If you look here, different material here, here, and this. So this contrasting material is a clever way to give a bit of a character to the interior. Even right here, look at that texture. No one else would do something like this. But Kia, being the cool brand these days, like to take a bit of a risk and come up with some interesting design theme. This driver's seat and also the passenger side can also be placed into a relaxing mode. So this comes up and it will support your sort of thigh, and it can recline even more to make it feel like you're in a first class cabin. So again, Kia does something a little bit different from all the other brands. And in terms of the way everything fit and the way they've been designed, I think it's just absolutely cool. So a typical engineer like myself would appreciate what they try to do to come up with a very unique but also creative interior. So what about the actual numbers? What would I give for engineering design aspect of the exterior and interior? I'm going to give both of them 4.0 as well, because the way that they put all the materials together I think is cool. It's a good combination of different materials. So again, exterior design and engineering 4.0, interior design engineering 4.0. And I know that sounds kind of boring because so far I've given nothing but 4.0, but stay with me as I continue to critique the rest of the car because maybe they won't be 4.0. Okay, so now I have the EV9 on the road. So I do want to talk about two sections under what I call performance, which is handling and powertrain. So handling, and obviously powertrain refers to electric motor in this case. How is that in terms of the on-the-road performance? Well, what I can report is, first of all, in terms of its ability to corner and handle the road, it's surprisingly good for a large three-row SUV. This thing is big and it's quite chunky, but it doesn't feel large. It feels like a compact SUV because of the athletic feel. And then the steering, thankfully, has a really good feedback, and it actually has a good heft and the weight to it. Many SUVs, regardless of whether it's electric or gas, has a really light steering with almost no feedback and no feeling. But thankfully, Kia actually built in a very good feel to the steering. So I love that, especially compared to many other electric cars. And the handling is quite agile and sharp. I can turn left and right quickly like this, and the car actually moves right on the cue, and it goes exactly where it's pointed. So handling is excellent for a large three-row SUV. Obviously not as good as a smaller SUV that has a more compact dimension. So I give a solid 3.7 for handling because of the fact that it's able to corner well and handle well regardless of the size of this vehicle. What about the powertrain? Well, the motor in this case have a number of different configurations. You can get a rear-wheel drive version or all-wheel drive versions, and each one has its own configuration. But regardless, the top model like this one has 379 horsepower, so plenty of power. But more than that, when you step on the accelerator, it takes off briskly but very smooth. It's not so quick like this, push you against the seat. And I think that's by design, and I like that better because it doesn't feel as unnatural. And one of the challenges for many EVs out there is that it doesn't feel natural because it's either too brisk when you step on the accelerator, or when you let the accelerator go, you get zoom because of regen braking, and people actually get motion sickness. But thankfully in the EV9, I can actually control the amount of regen. If I put it to level 1, which is what I have now, it drives like a normal car, and when I let the accelerator go, it slows down just like a normal car or normal SUV, which might be gasoline powered. So I really like that about that. So I actually find this setup for powertrain much more desirable than a more aggressive feel that sometimes you get with other EVs. So I'm going to give a solid 4.0 for the configuration of the motor and the feel of the electric motor in this EV9. I think engineer did a really good job of calibrating and tuning the electric motor system in this model. The next category is just simply called road feel, and therefore it's a bit of a continuation of a previous category, but how does it ride? Well, unfortunately, this is one of the weaknesses. I'm going over some bumpy road right now, and it's a very busy suspension. I think it's reasonably firm, which means you get good cornering and good stability, but over rough roads, it begins to lose a bit of a stability, and it's quite a busy suspension. So I think this is one of the challenges for EVs because in general they're heavy. This thing weighs around 7,000 pounds, and to compensate for that, engineers have to make suspensions very stiff, and it really shows through when you're driving over bumpy roads. So I'm not too happy with the ride. It's totally fine in the smooth road like this right now, but over bumpy road it tends to lose its composure a little bit and feels a little bit too busy for me. But what about the NVH? Well, being a fully electric car is super quiet. The isolation and the insulation is really good. There's an option to turn on this artificial sound, which really sounds strange to me, almost sounds like an airplane flying overhead. So I have that turned off now. You can choose a different level of sound intensity, and you may like it, I don't know, but I don't like it, and I'm glad I'm able to turn that off. So noise, vibration, harshness, excellent if you're not using that strange artificial motor sound because it's really quiet. But if you're using that one, it's kind of odd feelings to me, and I'm not too crazy about that sound. So in terms of number, what would I give? Well, unfortunately, as I mentioned, the ride is stiff, and therefore it corners well, but it doesn't ride too well over bumpy road. So I'm going to give it 3.0. It's not bad, it's fair, but I wouldn't call it good. And then in terms of NVH, I'm gonna give it a solid 4.5 because it's so quiet, and insulation and noise level is really low unless you turn the artificial sound on, and then it kind of feels really odd. But anyhow, the overall NVH is excellent. The last category is called value, which is broken into two categories: the value as you buy the vehicle, and then also the resale value. So whether this is a good price in the marketplace and how much you will lose after, let's say, 3 or 4 years of ownership. So in terms of value, the price is actually really a sweet spot, but it's no longer cheap. This is $81,000 Canadian, fully equipped, top of the line, but that is still a lot. Now, if you compare it to something from a Rivian, it is way cheaper, you know, $50,000, $60,000 cheaper than a Rivian. So you might argue that it is a good price, but Kia as a brand, not quite out there in terms of being seen as a premium brand. So I still think it's a lot of money. So I'm going to give 3.7 for value, just because people might expect something cheaper. Now, you can buy a cheaper trim level of the EV9, and that's pretty reasonably priced. But if you want to buy top of the line, it gets quite pricey. Now, in terms of resale value, this is where Kia is going to struggle a little bit for two reasons. One, all the EVs, or electric cars, have not had a good resale value because the battery has a shelf life of between, let's say, 8 to 12 years. So the longer you keep, the less valuable the car is, because used car buyers don't want to buy EVs with half life of a battery. So this is a problem for all EV, not just to do with EV9, but the resale value is going to be hard because of that reason. But also Kia, traditionally speaking, has more challenges keeping up the resale value because used Kias aren't as respected as, let's say, used Hondas or Toyotas. So I can only give 3.0 for resale value, once again, until such time that Kia can prove itself and EV market begin to mature. So that's the sort of my conclusion for the last category. But overall, the EV9 is really the only 3-row SUV you can buy right now in a fully electric version. In this price range, there's nothing else out there. There'll be more models coming out. Toyota will eventually come up with a 3-row SUV as well in the EV market. But until then, Kia has this market cornered. It looks great. Wherever I go with this vehicle, people look at it and say, what is this thing? It looks cool. So design-wise, engineer-wise, even manufacturing quality-wise, it's right up there with some of the best, and the price is right. If you really want to get a large SUV, you don't have much choice anyway. But I think the biggest hesitation right now is whether you should buy an EV at this stage in our life when there are new batteries coming out in 2 or 3 years' time, such as solid-state batteries, that can completely revolutionize the EV market with much better range and faster charging. And even though this EV9 has a really good range up to 304 miles, it is still a bit of a challenge because it still takes a long time to charge. It does have a fast charging, and so that's helpful. But in 3 or 4 years' time, there might be solid-state batteries that can charge in 10-15 minutes versus what it might take hours right now. And so that will be the biggest challenge for EV9, but EVs in general. Aside from that, if you really need a large 3-row SUV and you love EVs, this is the right choice. Don't buy Tesla or Rivians that are way more expensive. This is more than sufficient. In fact, it is luxurious, it's comfortable, and priced right. So I do like the EV9, and I do recommend it for those of you who are looking for a full-size SUV with a 3-row and you want it fully electric. So let me know in the comments below what you think. If you haven't done so yet, would you also give me a thumbs up? And if you haven't subscribed yet, we'd truly appreciate it if you can subscribe as well. Until next video, I'm signing off for now. Thank you so much.